All right, thank you very much for joining us, GDG Oslo, for our second GDG App Clinic. My name is Rita Meyer. I'm a developer advocate on the Android team, and joining me live from New York is Roman Urich and Ian Nee Lewis.
Roman, did I mention that we're in New York? Roman's in New York, and so am I.
Very nice. So we're going to take a look at a few apps from the excellent developers in Oslo. You've got your work cut out for you. The guys from Prague we looked at last time were pretty impressive, so we'll have to see how well you do further north. All right, so without further ado, I'd like to invite the developer of NSB to come up and tell us a little bit about their app and about themselves, and we can go from there.
Hello.
Hello, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Greetings from Norway.
So tell us a little bit about your app and introduce yourself, of course, please.
Yeah, my name is John. I'm from NSB. I'm a digital consultant, and I'm going to talk about the NSB app, which we submitted. It's the 5.0 version, so it's not released yet. The current version is 4.04, actually. It does exist, and so the new version has flat design and so on. And the meaning with the app is for the Norwegian train company called NSB to increase ticket availability, get real-time travel updates, and the ability to get a ticket on the phone.
So this is NSB. So this is the new front page, and as you can see, it shares a lot of the same thematic elements as the previous version, but we've kind of lost that dashboard pattern with the big, giant, oversized buttons, which was one of the bits of feedback that I had beforehand. So already this is looking a lot nicer.
The design here is really good. It's really clean. There's a lot of things to like about it. The main thing that bothered me when we first loaded it up is that so many things are blank. So for instance, if you press the button labeled Train Journey, now you've used it a little bit in the sense that you have a couple of favorites. I see they begin with A, just like my favorites do. But before you have anything in the favorites or the journey or before you've performed any search, that area below the search bar is simply blank. However, if you click in the search bar, which you might want to do right now, I don't know actually what's going to happen. So that brings up a list of matching stations, and if it's, if you don't have anything in the search bar, they're all there. So my first piece of advice is that should always appear. It's just logical. There's no reason that it should suddenly appear when you click in the search bar versus not being there to begin with.
Okay.
The favorites are more or less the same way. When you don't have any favorites, it's literally just a blank screen. And the user has no way to interact with it, which is disturbing. So my suggestion would be that you actually have something at the top of the screen that, for instance, an add favorites item. I'm a big fan, I don't know how you feel about it, Roman, but I'm a big fan of lists whose last item is add another item.
Yeah, it's kind of following the principle of direct manipulation. The thing that you're working on, I mean, the actions that you can take on the thing you're working on are directly on top of what you're working on. So it's kind of like if you remove an item from a list, you simply swipe it away. If you add an item to the list, it's at the bottom of the list where that item would appear if you were to add it. Yeah, that makes sense.
If you plan a journey, I think I think this is really where it shines. You set
I think a server error, which is unfortunate.
Oh dear. Yeah, it does.
You
can't see it on there. So now you search for a couple stations. You plan a journey from them, and with one exception, I think it's a wonderful UI. Unfortunately, with Reta's server error, the one exception keeps popping up over and over, which is your ticket is valid from spinner. Props to making a spinner that's flat. One thing we've noticed though is that even though the spinner back in 2006 was just really trendy, it hasn't aged well. It's not actually as convenient a UI as you'd think it might be. And you notice that we've moved off the spinner in some of our apps towards more direct things like numeric keypads that seem to work a lot better.
Yeah, and sometimes for calendars, especially, is free, right? So you can actually use 30-day month calendars that you flip up and down between the different months. It's a little more square, so it works better in different aspect ratios. It's scrollable, so it definitely works for longer content or for longer spaces. But it's really easy to wrap your head around. So you can actually visually see the days of the week, which I think days of the week are one of the most important aspects of choosing a date, especially when you're planning a trip. You're probably planning a trip around a weekend or around a specific day, like going out or going to work, whatever. And visually seeing the place in the week that you're choosing something will give you that extra bit of context. So I definitely recommend something like a month calendar. I think that we've started using the kind of the 30-day view. Some of our apps.
Yeah. When I see something like this, my first thought is, oh, I guess your project manager has an iPhone.
I do.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we can't quite get to the last bit where we actually see the ticket, but I think one of the things which I noticed in the previous version, and I've seen a little bit of it here as well, is that every time you do something which requires contact with the server, we get a little flash-up dialogue telling us that we're communicating something with the server. That's something which I really think takes away from the magic of how mobile phones work. I mean, we all know that it's connected to the internet and it needs to talk to your server and do all of that stuff. You kind of want your users to think that it's just a magic thing where your phone just knows how to train things. And the fact that there's an internet connection and mobile telephony, all of that is just kind of completely hidden away. So you want to try and make sure that you're not displaying any of those sorts of dialogues, particularly because usually they just come up really quickly. You just have a sort of a flash of talking to server, and if it all works, it flashes away. And you just kind of think as a user, what was that? Was that important? Should I have read that? So you really want to try and just disguise all of that unless something goes wrong. And if it does go wrong, try and be as descriptive as you can in a way that doesn't rely on understanding how your app has been implemented to your user. So something like unable to buy train tickets, no connection to internet found, something like that is more useful than server communication error, where the user is like, I don't know what any of that means, did I do something wrong? Rather than, okay, well, I can try again later because my connectivity is down, which they may be more easily able to understand.
Okay, so we just got the schedule, which you may be able to see here if I can hold it still enough. I realize that's not coming through very well. You can see that's a really clean design. It's got the nice red band at the top. Everything else is monochrome, but there's a fairly good differentiation using fonts and highlighting. I think, based on the specific application, and I'm not familiar with the trains of Norway at all, but I can readily believe that they are all color-coded in different shades of gray. But if they're not, and if there is any kind of color coding, that might be a really nice additional effect, is to add some more information that's going to help people find the platform or the particular train that they're looking for. But this does a pretty good job of not being too busy, I think. I don't know, if I were to redesign this, I might just use a thin font on the city names.
Yeah, that's one of the best ways to add a touch of elegance to your apps, as well as help even further tweak the hierarchy, the visual hierarchy that you get from text. Is to use different weights of roboto, different sizes, not too many different sizes, at most maybe two, really at most 3 different sizes, but different font weights really help communicate hierarchy. But yeah, like you said, Ian, I think that the hierarchy is very evident as is.
I think Roman would probably say that, putting the entire time in the same weight is wrong. Of course, the hours should be bold and the minutes. Just kidding. Yeah, this looks really good, and I don't know if you can see it, but I love the way that the platform is in a little box. I think really easy to see, and it also is a little, just kind of elegant. So that's very nice.
Yeah, and I have to say, the biggest feedback I have a page of notes which I've tried to take on each of the apps, and they were all based on version 4, and version 5 fixes all of them. So my feedback is nice job on version 5. You've really updated the app, brought it into sort of the modern age of Android, where it's action bar, holo themed, nice clean flat lines, a lack of clutter, simple intuitive navigation. So all of the little niggles that I had around making it sort of more of a modern up-to-date app, I think you've absolutely nailed. So yeah, nicely done.
The one thing I wanted to mention is about the home screen. We spent a little bit of time talking about onboarding flows, and I think that outside of the Google playlisting, the very first thing you see in the app is probably your most important screen. It's almost a hero moment. So I would spend even more time on this landing screen to tweak it a bit. Right now it feels very static. That's one of the problems that we moved away, or one of the reasons we moved away from the dashboard pattern and anything that basically just has links on it. We moved more towards a content-driven home screen. So one of the things that you may want to consider doing is things like profile. You may want to move into like the action bar, since it is navigation, but it's often treated as an action. It's kind of like a common thing to put the profile in like an overflow or something. And then things like view ticket. If you don't have a ticket, there's no reason to, I guess, show that, I'm guessing. But you could also just have it as a, I don't want to say card, but have it as a scrollable item you can get to.
Well, another thing to think about is this would be a perfect opportunity to use some of the new action detection, because if you know that the person is in the middle of a train journey, then probably the first thing they want to do is view a ticket. That's probably why they pulled it out of their pocket to begin with, because the conductor is coming down the aisle. That would be a truly magical moment, to always see exactly what you need, and then perhaps hide some of this other stuff either on the action bar or in a drawer, or some other way, some other well understood way to access these navigational links.
Yeah, so like it's almost like Google now. It tries to predict what you may be most interested in. Here, you may be able to say, like, if you think that the user is in a place where they want to access that ticket, show that ticket option. Actually, show the actual ticket at the very top, and then show other options like favorites, and then let's say you could even potentially place the entire search screen or the beginning of the search process into the screen. So you basically kind of give easy access, immediate access to the very first step of each of those flows, and then once the user decides that, hey, yeah, I do want to view the full ticket, they just touch that tile and they get taken to the full ticket view. But then the position is based on things like activity detection.
Another thing that I think would be incredibly useful here, but significantly more work, would be integration with the map view. That's one of the things I notice when I frequently need transit in a city that I'm unfamiliar with. The first thing I'll do is open my map, figure out where I need to go, try to find a station nearby, and then get directions to that. So that's one thing that could be really nice if you feel that many of your users might be going to unfamiliar locations. And of course, if they're going to familiar locations, it's great to just have those favorites in hand.
Yeah, in fact, that's probably one of the bits of feedback I have based on sort of what Ian and Roman have just been talking about, is that right now your home screen kind of looks as though it was designed based on your API endpoints. So we have an API which lets us call for the train journey. We have another one which lets us retrieve our favorites, one which gives us access to our profile, those sort of data-driven design. It would be really interesting to see a reimagined version of the home screen based around the guidelines that Roman and Ian were talking about, which is, what does a user want to do when they open up the app? What are they thinking? What are the most likely things for someone who uses this every day, or someone who is visiting Oslo? How are they going to take advantage of the app, and try and think about redesigning the UI from the perspective of what you want to do rather than what's available for you to do. So I definitely agree. I think putting things like the ticket on the at the bottom of the main screen seems like an obvious thing to me. If I have a ticket already and it's valid, have it there. And if I don't, it seems like the most likely thing I'm going to want to do with the app is buy a ticket. So having a big plus symbol there so that you can, initiate that action right from the beginning seems like it might be useful. So yeah, that's I would consider redesigning the home screen, which is really the only thing which hasn't changed much in the redesigns, to be more of a, what is it that you think people want to do, and reduce the number of steps for them to be able to get to the specific action that they have installed this app for.
Now, before we move on, I want to point out the one feature that none of us have talked about, but which is really incredibly well done, and that's localization.
Yes.
We did not ask for this app in English, but here it is, showing us almost completely in English, except for I don't know what Reader is.
It's the name of the company.
Oh, well, there you go.
I wondered the same. Yeah, it's the equivalent of Amtrak, I guess. But yeah, no, I absolutely, totally agree. Like, this is something which a lot of people overlook when they're building apps for a specific location, is they figure, well, you don't need to localize the train app for Norway, right? Like, it's going to be used by Norwegian people, except when it isn't, which is what I found out when I was traveling around Italy, trying to buy tickets on Train Italia, and their website does not localize to anything but Italian, and that makes it an intriguing challenge to buy Eurail tickets in a foreign country.
Everybody can read Italian, come on.
Well, I prefer not to. But yeah, so that's this sort of thinking as to who all of your potential users are is really, really valuable, because suddenly you have everyone who's visiting is going to use this app because it's all localized, they feel comfortable, it looks familiar, it works in a familiar way, and they understand what it says. So yeah, thank you for localizing. It certainly makes our job as reviewers easier, and I think it's going to help to grow your audience of potential users online as well.
Bravo. Which languages are you localized into?
Sorry?
Which languages do you have translations for in your app?
I think it's connected to the language in the phone, but I think it's only Norwegian and English. So,
okay. You might want to add Chinese.
Chinese, okay. Noted.
Yeah, it's an easy one.
Yeah.
All right,
a lot of Chinese tourists these days.
That's true, yeah. All right, perfect. Thank you, John, and thank you for your patience in letting us detour around your app and come back into it. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add in terms of responding to our feedback, or things which you have planned to do but perhaps haven't had time to implement in the current version?
Not really. I'm going to take the notes back to the team and we'll discuss it.
Awesome. Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing version 5 when it comes out for real. It's definitely a great job and a really good update, so nicely done.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm the creator of Phone Locator.
Hey, Alex.
This project started in 2007 on Symbian, when Android was just in its infancy. So the idea back then was to track my own motorcycle tour around Europe. I wanted to show my friends back home where I was and where my friend was as well.
Sure.
So I made the app. It had no login, no nothing. It just showed. There was just a website. You could just see where this one Nokia phone was. In those days, GPS on phones was completely new. So quite late, actually, last year, I released this Android version, which represents about 120 hours of work. It has all the same features in that the Symbian one did, which it kind of morphed into a security product long before it was built into your iPhone or Android device. So you can send this phone a text message containing the word alarm. I think my friend's going to try that now, and it will sound an alarm, so you can find the phone. Yeah, okay. So it creates a notification. You have to deactivate the notification. You can choose whether or not you want to hide that message, so that the person who has the phone could see it or not. You can set a passcode as well, so that the person who has the phone has to type in a passcode before they can disable the alarm. It has a buddy message feature, so if the SIM card in the phone is changed, it will text the predefined number saying, this is the new number that's in the telephone. And of course it periodically updates its location, so you can see the timer there. It's going to update in 10 minutes. it's pretty. You have to be pretty conservative with the updates. It was before this new Google Play services, low power stuff. I had to code it all myself to try and decide whether it's going to use GPS or Wi-Fi to work out where the phone is.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So the Symbian version had 400,000 registered users. The Android version is a fraction of that. Only a few thousand people have used it, I think. So yeah, that's Phone Locator.
Okay, nice. So thank you for the update. So I had a few thoughts, based on my first experience of using it, and I think probably the biggest feedback I have is that it's not immediately obvious when you install it what it does or how to use it. So without getting sort of your 2-minute intro there, it's not entirely clear. Like you have to create a login, and then it takes your GPS and sends it to a server, but it's not immediately obvious when I'm using the app what it's doing with any of that data.
What it does. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it sort of starts to get you a little bit nervous. Also the amount of time it takes to sort of get set up is kind of longer than you'd expect. Like you have to go to the website to create this whole profile and username and login.
I knew you would say that. Okay, so let me tell you why. It's not really an excuse, but there's some legacy there. This app was made before it was actually standard to use HTTP and JSON to actually update. So it uses a really low bandwidth protocol to send the updates to the server, binary protocol. And
wow.
in those days, making forms and things on Symbian was hard work. So I thought, well, why not just do it on the web? And then when I came to do the Android version, I nearly changed it so you like a proper login screen and everything. But in the end, I thought, oh, well, I'll just use the same web interface rather than recoding it. But I take the point. It's not very intuitive.
Well, see, now you've got an advantage. You could actually take advantage of the fact that you've procrastinated this long and just used Google Plus Sign In instead. So then you don't have to do the form or anything like that. It gets simple. So you get rewarded for having put it off. But that might be a neat way to sort of reduce the friction of that initial sign-in flow.
I would like to say one thing about that. So there's two things that are really important about the beginning of your app. First is that you can do something without having to log in. It's something it's difficult to do, but in this case, for instance, there are some features that you could enable without logging in that might give the user some idea of what they're getting into. But the other thing is to make the login.
How could that look?
Well, for instance, in this case, you can set your buddy message. I think there's like a couple other things you can, some settings and things like that. Now, obviously, the app has no functionality, but for instance, the screen we're looking at now could give some message like, you would have a next update in 2 minutes if you were logged in, which you're not, and then have a facility for logging you in.
Sure.
The other thing that you want to think about, though, is how many clicks it takes to log in. On the website form, it's a lot. And
I completely agree with the previous comment. It's got to change. This app is actually going to be retired and replaced with a new brand and something completely awesome.
Potentially a similar thing you could do, and this is all part of kind of that onboarding flow, which is so important, especially if you ever get featured. A lot of people get into your app that don't know about your brand, don't know what it does. One of the things you could do is say, here's your current location, like let's say we're in New York, and then maybe even show a preview of the website. And this is kind of crazy, but maybe show a preview of the website showing the map with your location, saying here's what you would see if you were on a computer and you had the service. You would see that your phone is in New York. So you could almost use the live data, see where the person is, because you don't need to log in to get their location, and then just kind of show a fake version of the website showing that location. That might be some way of communicating the value using kind of this direct, in a direct way rather than just talking about it.
Remember that we've done a lot of work to make it easy to download and install lots of apps. So one usage pattern we see a lot is that people will search for a term, install 5 or 10 apps that seem to have associations with that term, and then they will uninstall the ones they don't like after about 20 seconds of use. So the first 20 or 30 seconds, that's really crucial. In fact, I'd even say 5 seconds is crucial.
Yeah. Okay. So you've only got it's like a web page. You've got a few seconds to impress, and then that's it. You've blown it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool.
And just on that point, it's not even after you install the app, before you even install the app, right? So the screenshots, the app icon on Google Play, the description, all of that is part of that user experience, that initial onboarding experience. The very first time the user kind of has any sort of communication with your brand or any sort of interaction with you is through that. So that is even before you even get to the app.
Yeah, it's a very kind way of putting it. Thank you. So I've got a new brand. It's made by a designer, not by me. I'm a developer, and it looks really cool.
Awesome.
But by the way, this app is open source, so anybody who's watching and wants to get involved, then that would be brilliant if they can find me. It's on GitHub.
Excellent. So a couple of other points along the same lines. I think probably the biggest feedback is based on where the app has come from, right? So it's an app that's been around for a long time, based originally on Symbian, and I think we all know that the world has changed significantly in terms of the way mobile phone apps look and work. Since that time, even though it was surprisingly short period of time has passed, a lot has changed. So I think a lot of the feedback is going to be along those lines. I'd love to see you integrate the new location-based services as well to try and help make that the location updates a little bit more efficient, and Google Plus sign-in as well as an alternative to potentially to having to create a new account each time. And I also noticed that we are forced into portrait mode and it doesn't work on a tablet, which makes a lot of sense in some instances, but it might be interesting to see how an app like this would work on a tablet if there is some functionality that you could continue to use. Things like the GPS updates would, even if the security aspects of being able to call the phone aren't available.
You might also want to give just a little bit more thought to your action bar layout. It doesn't seem like the ordering of the menu is effective in terms of getting the most important things on the action bar. There's some things that probably shouldn't ever leave the overflow menu. For instance, settings is almost never necessary as an action bar button. I also noticed that if you do go to, for instance, buddy message settings, can you do that, Reto, on your phone? No, not settings, but buddy message settings, which is also, that's something that might want to live under settings rather than under a different menu item. This page, I think, would be really a good candidate for the done cancel action bar pattern.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and you want to. One of the good things about this app is that it's simple. Like it doesn't have a cluttered UI. You don't have a million different things confronting you on screen. But you've kind of almost gone sort of too far in that direction. In that it's a lot of this stuff you could quite easily have put on the main screen because all we have there is a countdown. So you could certainly add a few more elements to that to explain what happens when that countdown runs out. And basically like this buddy message, for example, you could have that displayed on screen. Have the
If you don't set the buddy message, it does warn you that you've not set the buddy message.
It does.
On the main screen.
But it doesn't tell me what that means. It just says, you haven't set a buddy message. And it's like, okay, is that a bad thing?
Yeah.
In fact,
I don't even know what a buddy message is.
Precisely.
Sure.
I'm still not sure what a buddy message is. So this is what we get. You haven't set a buddy message and you have the button to fix it, which is good that it's an actionable prompt to be able to go in there and fix. But again, you have no idea of what the implications are. And as a user, the first time I open up the app, this is what I see. And so I'm basically being told, hey, you're doing something wrong. You haven't done this thing yet. So I don't even know if you deserve to use my app. Which isn't really the kind of feeling you want to give people, right? You want to make them feel happy, feel like they're doing the right thing, and that if there's something which isn't set, it's, I'm sure you just haven't gotten around to it, or, here's a thing which we could use to make this app even more useful to you. So you want to provide a little bit of context. You want to try and be more positive in terms of the messaging, in terms of this is what this will allow you to do, rather than, hey, you haven't done this thing.
Okay.
Cool. So I think that's about all of the feedback that I had. I don't know if there's any more specific stuff. It's the thing is it's not particularly complex, which means that once you get kind of past those initial sorts of bits of feedback, there's not too much else that we can provide at this stage. But hopefully that's useful for you. Is there anything else you want to add? Ian?
Thanks very much, guys. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. No. Thank you.
All right. Hello. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Okay. First off, just thank you very much for doing this. We really appreciate you taking the time. And yeah, so the Finn app. Where to start? I can tell you a little bit about the company. It's a reasonably recognized company in Norway in terms of a lot of people know who Finn are. We have about, the website have about 3.5 million visitors a week, unique visitors, and there are like 5 million people in Norway. And it's a marketplace for properties, bits and pieces, cars. It's a place where you go to find jobs, etc. So so what we've done is we're actually in the process of making this Android app. It's an alpha at the moment, and it's a few months away from launch. It's the first time we're actually showing it off to anyone outside Finn. So that's pretty cool.
Thank you. Yeah, that's quite an honor.
And the idea behind the app is to make it faster for people to access the content of Finn. So at the moment we have a sort of like a web platform for mobile phones, and what happens is that if you go onto Finn, you have to go through a number of steps in order to do a search. So what a lot of people do is they go onto Finn and then they dream about, like, upgrading the house or wherever. So they spend a lot of time searching through the things that are on Finn. And in our current web app for mobile, what you have to do is you open it up and then you click on a market, and then you click on a sub-market, and then you have to select a location and go through all the filters, and then you click search, and then you're at the results page. So it's like a pretty long process. So what we wanted to do with this app was try to squeeze down the navigation path a little bit, and also do something that we haven't done before, and that is to try to be a little bit smart about how we deliver updates and relevant info to the user. So we have, the main page, the landing page that you see when you open app, is like a stream of content. And the idea is for that content to show new hits on searches that you have going on, and updates to things that you're looking for.
All right, so why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're missing while I get it installed over here?
Well, it's a very pretty app. The navigation departs pretty significantly from what we consider to be current Android standards. We certainly can't say that it's bad. It's non-standard, so it has a possibility of confusing the user and maybe making their learning curve a little higher than it has to be. It doesn't use the standard action bar, for instance. It uses a non-standard drawer pattern that actually started to confuse me already, because there seem to be multiple drawers that come out at different times. But it is a very beautiful app. It's sort of card-based, a little bit. It's very, very open and easy on the eyes. Lots of open space, maybe a little too much. But not much. I like the margins between cards, I think. You'll see what we're talking about in just a second here. I'll go ahead and wait for you to get it.
Great. We can switch. Okay, so
now we want to know what the exchange rate is, because I'm seeing some amazing houses. I'm thinking about buying.
Yeah, you don't want to. It's very pricey in Norway.
Well, we live in the Silicon Valley, and I can assure you it's not cheap
here.
So we have the right version on screen right now, which proves, so it's a good example, right? So what we saw beforehand was what happens if you just get a website, wrap it in a native wrapper, and stick it up. It doesn't look great. It's slow, it's janky, it's really not an optimized situation. So what we have here is exactly what happens when you do it the right way and create something which is truly native to give that that richer experience. So we can see what you were talking about now with that sort of stream of content right on the landing page. As soon as you go in, you're shown things. So suddenly you're not having to think about navigating through different areas of shopping, but you're shown actual content that you can engage in and gets you thinking about what it is that you're interested in.
So if I can ask a question, I'm going through these cards. They all have the same heading, which is fin.no. I don't see any difference.
Yeah, so just to explain that very quickly. We have the idea is for that stream that you see on the homepage to have content that relates to your searches. So new results on searches that you make, but we haven't been able to implement that bit yet. We're sort of in the process of doing it. But we have what we call curated content as well, which is we call it the FinCat. We have a mascot. It's a bit weird, but we have a mascot that is a cat. And it's really sarcastic, and it makes all these sarcastic comments about different things. So that's the cat that's sort of posting all these little updates onto the stream. So the idea is to have like a mix of updates from that cat, but also like new hits on the searches that you're making.
Nice. I would love to get updates from a sarcastic cat. That sounds like the coolest feature so far.
That's such a great way to make like a true form a true emotional bond with your users, to give them like a personality that they're working with. It's almost like when they open the app, they're kind of talking to the cat.
Yeah, I particularly like the idea that it's a sarcastic cat too. It's not like a helpful, friendly cat.
Makes all the difference.
Totally in your face, making fun of you. I think that's excellent.
God, I hope not. So I think the one thing that I'm seeing on the home screen, I'm very comfortable with the design, but it does seem like it's going to take me a while to get anywhere, and I wonder if there's something, a few techniques that you could use to, for instance, compress some of the information. Once I've seen the photos, I may, and this is why I asked about the headers, I may be able to locate the card that I'm looking for afterwards just by looking at the headers. So you could do something like slide cards over the top of one another, or shrink them down, or something. Once the user has seen them, so that getting to the bottom or navigating around doesn't take as many swipes.
Yeah, you could use a similar approach to what we have in Google Now, where some of the cards are sort of consist of other cards layered on top of each other that you press to expand or move around that way. It could be quite interesting. Yeah, it's a very attractive looking app. It's interesting the way you've implemented the a sliding drawer for search. So this is basically where you have your categories as well as the actual searching. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So that's all the main markets, and there are more markets to be added onto that.
Okay. And I assume that what I'm reading on screen here means search fin?
Yeah, so that's a global search for all the markets.
Cool. Well, what do you think about the idea of using a draw pattern for search categories, Roman?
Overall, my feedback here is that the drawer, like you mentioned at the beginning, the drawer being used in different ways, as well as hierarchy within the drawer, actually having a back button, or I guess an up within the drawers, is going to lead folks to be somewhat confused, because you end up creating lots of modes and states where, I could actually see I could get the drawer to its child screen, right? Like I guess what you have now, slide over the content, and then maybe a few minutes later I slide over to expand, and I completely forgot that the drawer was in the state of being, or was in the mode of kind of the child view. So there's a lot of hierarchy in the drawer. There's a lot of different states for the drawer. I'd really try to simplify that. The other thing is that, we obviously do have guidelines. I don't want to talk too much about guidelines here, but we do have navigation drawer guidelines. These do depart quite a bit from there, so if possible, I would try to follow those. And really, once you start searching, once you start going into the flow of doing a search, you may want to just replace the main content with the search filter. That may simplify things.
Yeah, I think that's where you're absolutely right. I think that's where it gets confusing, is that once you're on this screen here, then search actually means refined search, which is fine, except that it's different from what you have in the home screen, where search means, allow me to search or let me sort by category. So it's kind of different content, even if it's related. I also found it a little bit, I always find it a little bit disconcerting when you have sort of two slide-in panels. So we have the slide-in drawer on the left for search, and we have the slide-in drawer on the right for logging in. That particularly this login piece feels like it should be part of an action bar or something like that. I think this is very non-discoverable, and I assume that pressing that is the same thing, right? So you press the profile button and that drags it across. But I think the idea of the way that we use there's the slide-in panels and the drawers, as Roman says, this is very different from the way we have on the design guidelines, and so it can be a little bit disconcerting or counterintuitive to users who are expecting it to work in a certain way.
Yeah, it's sad though, because it's absolutely beautiful.
Oh yeah.
The action here, the animation, the colors, it's really, really nice.
Oh, definitely.
And I'd love to see some of those elements kept, but just you have to think about what are your users going to be experienced with. It's always tempting to go with an entirely new design, or to it's also very tempting sometimes to import design from another mobile device family. But you have to remember, someone who's had their Android phone for a while, who loves it, will have interacted with a lot of apps that offer similar navigation and functionality to yours, perhaps in a different vertical. And this will be a learning experience. And learning experiences are sometimes fun, but they're often frustrating when you have a task in mind that you want to get done.
Right. I just want to mention that we're actually struggling a little bit to find a suitable pattern. So we did look through quite a few Android apps and Android guidelines, and looking for something that sort of combined, drilling into our market and also having the filters there. Part of the reason we did it like this was because it's sort of scaled up quite nicely when you're on a tablet, so you can have the filter constantly available on the left-hand side, so you can tweak the filters while seeing real-time updates of the results on the right-hand side. So it works. We thought this was something that we kind of know that it's not optimal, but we didn't find a better solution, to be honest.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying. I think for tablet layout, it would look great. I think it's exactly the sort of layout that you want to use, where you have everything on screen. Here it almost feels as though I think it's as well, rather than any individual problem. It's more of a combination of a lot of paradigms that are being used slightly differently from how you would expect it. And so then as a experienced Android user, you start to get confused as to what you need to do to navigate around. It's primarily around navigation. So here, for example, I'm sort of expecting to be able to swipe, to bring something back, but I can't. Here it's back, which is an up button, which looks similar to what I would expect an up button to be, but looks different. So it again gives me that pause for thought, like what is this going to do? So you're never quite sure how to navigate back to where you're from, because here I need to either hit back, or I need to bring my navigation drawer back and then hit back in order to return to the previous menu. That's kind of unexpected. I never expect to have to slide out a drawer before I'm able to navigate back up in the hierarchy.
Now I'm gonna take a slightly contradictory position to Reto and say this app feels very designed, and it feels like every interview that I have, every question I have about navigation is solved in an elegant manner. I do agree that it's completely non-standard, but I think we should recognize that a lot of thought has gone into this. And there's some interesting problems. What I would really love to see, if Roman's up for it, is to have this be an Android design in action candidate, and talk a little bit about the challenges that you faced, how you solved them, and see if we can find something that fits into the Android standard that solves them as elegantly.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good.
There's a lot of there's a lot of hierarchy here. That's one of the hardest things you can do with as a designer, is dealing with different hierarchies and different flows, as well as obviously what you mentioned before, the tablet versus phone scenario. How do things work? How do things respond to different sizes? definitely, the next few episodes of Android Design in Action, we're looking to kind of get back into the redesign or the reimagining world. So definitely, this is one of the apps that we'll consider.
Yeah, I think it's one of the challenges that I've seen this a lot from apps which are trying to do, some sort of shopping or anything where you have to navigate through multiple categories and then do multiple sort of filtering, on each of those categories. It becomes a real challenge. I've seen people try and do it using drop downs in the action bar or having, the filter controls here on the top of the screen, but then that obscures all of the content. So yeah, I've seen a lot of apps try. And having that sort of multi-level hierarchy is definitely a challenge. So I'd be very interested to see what Roman and his team can come up with as possible alternatives.
One minor thing I wanted to call out here. So this kind of starts feeling a little bit like, this is solving the problem of master detail, right? Where you have master. I guess when you actually go into search, you have the search filter. You almost have like it takes a little bit of mental gymnastics to see it, but maybe it's kind of like a master on the left and detail on the right, and what you end up having is basically you're now in the cars or the music or the guitars or things section of the app, and pressing up should actually take you back to the top with the stream and the navigation on the left. So basically you have two activities. At the top you have the stream as well as the navigation jar, but as soon as you jump into like cars or something else, you get taken to a new activity with a sliding pane layout, which works on tablet and tablet as well as phone, where the left side is your master and the right side is your detail. So that's one way we could approach it. But definitely, for Android Design in Action, if we get a chance to take a look at this, we'll see if that pans out. It's just kind of a off-the-cuff idea.
Yeah, I have to admit that's the one thing. So I feel like every single page here is beautiful, but the navigation is a little weird. And right now, I'm just trying to figure out how to get back to the sarcastic cat. Yeah, so.
Yeah, it's a beautiful app. I think we really want to emphasize the fact that it looks great. Even understanding nothing in terms of Norwegian, you're still able to navigate it and understand what's going on. You've used icons in the right places to be able to understand. Like again here, even without understanding what these categories are, it's obvious to me that they are categories and that I can use them to navigate into the app, and I can figure out where search is. I understand how to change prices. I understand what I'm looking at, what it represents, and it represents a really good example of what we should all be doing when we create our apps, which is try and use it without being able to understand any of the language. Even do a localization in just gibberish, so that the text lengths are about the right size, but you have no idea what it says, and then give it to someone and see how well they navigate it. It gives you a really good idea of how your visual cues are working, how the layout, how the navigation, how everything is implying to them what they're looking at without actually using the text as a cue. And for a mobile app, this is really important because people don't necessarily read what they're looking at. This is kind of a truism for a lot of things. People don't read. You can tell them things a million times, put it on big screens, explain something in detail, they're not going to read it, they're going to skip straight through it. So you need to make sure that the rest of the app pushes them in the right direction, gives them all of the other cues, so that even if they're not paying attention, they're just glancing at the screen or they're making assumptions, it works out. It does still do what they expect it to do and makes them feel comfortable that they understand how it works and how they can interact with it. And I think you've done a really good job there. It's just, as we've said repeatedly, I think it's just the navigation which could use a little bit of a tweak, and I think otherwise it's a great effort. It's a great looking app.
The one thing that I really appreciate, and I wanted to point out specifically because it's very hard to do, is that the app is completely buttery smooth, even though it has to fetch quite a lot of data, including photos. And you can see that the photos not only load in the background, but they also fade in with a nice effect.
Yeah.
Which makes the app feel considerably smoother and less abrupt. So I think the engineering behind the central list view is really stellar, and I want to congratulate you.
My last 2 points of constructive criticism or feedback. First, there's a distinct lack of touch feedback throughout. So when you put your finger down on something, it should light up. The entire touch area should light up to indicate that you've begun interacting with it. The second thing was with those photos, they load in just beautifully. But as you're scrolling through the list, there's just white space there, and it almost feels like they're just missing or misaligned. So you may want to use a placeholder image, maybe even just a slightly gray, like an off-white color to indicate that this is a placeholder space where something will load in. That'll kind of potentially improve the feeling of alignment.
Yeah, well, and I think that if you look into these products, they've actually done that in some cases where the one that I haven't looked at already. When the photo is loading, there. Oh no, not the loading spinner. Yeah, it's got a loading spinner, but it's. Yeah, I like the idea of a very slightly darker gray box.
Yeah, just something so that you know something is going to come. I think is a really good idea. Everything, I love how buttery smooth everything is. I like that you've done, that you can tell a lot of thought has gone into how much pre-caching you do. So when I do load up a page for a new article, I can swipe once or like 2 or 3 photos and they're there instantly. But once I start to go much further, then it's going to do the reload. So it doesn't aggressively download all 9 photos, but it will get the first 4, the ones which I'm most likely to look at. Those little touches can make a really big difference, so nicely done.
The other thing I'm really a fan of here, Reto, I want you to check it out. I don't know how you feel, but I feel like, swiping through photos, obviously, I want to either look at one or the other. And I've worked with some apps where you really do need to swipe it all the way across as a big finger gesture. You notice this, after you've moved it about maybe 5 or 10 millimeters, it'll simply swipe over to the next one. So it just takes a very tiny gesture to get it to move from one photo to the other. I really appreciate that because it saves my thumbs, and my thumbs are arthritic. So.
Yeah, I'm not quite seeing it happen that quickly. It needs to go about halfway as far as my eyes can see it.
Yeah, it's definitely velocity sensitive, and I think that's probably appropriate.
Oh yeah.
So if you try,
it's a very small throw. We'll transfer. Yeah.
Once you get above a certain velocity threshold, and that's great. I mean, that just feels really good. I think it's an excellent gesture.
So there are only 2 other things which Roman has prompted me on, which are worth noting. So one is that where you have the action bar icons up here, they don't have tooltips associated, so you want to make sure that they do. So if people long press on these, we'll tell them what it is that they're trying to accomplish, which is always useful, particularly for people with visual impairments. Those sorts of things make a really big difference. And while we're talking touch targets, it would be, I think, really useful to allow users to select some of the text in the description fields for the items that they're looking at. So you do have a mechanism for sharing, which will allow you to send a link to that particular item to someone. Great, really useful. But I think it would also be useful to be able to quickly and easily select things like the price or the description so that they can take that, cut it, paste it, put it into something else, maybe an email, maybe a document, Google Keep, whatever it is that they're doing to try and keep track of things. So I think adding that flexibility, I think, would be really, really useful.
By the way, going back to what we were talking about in some of the other apps about what can you do when you're not logged in, right? Check out, press the little heart button, which in my opinion should probably be a star, but heart, whatever. Now, there's no explanatory text here, and there probably should be, but this is a good example of how you can provide value without being logged in. Right? You get to a point in the app where you have to be logged in this case to set a favorite, and you're given the opportunity to log in there. At least I think that's what's going on.
I believe so. I think the one comment I have here is that it doesn't appear to be a way to create an account if you don't already have one. Is that because you can't?
No, it's coming.
It's coming.
we just haven't got around to it yet.
It isn't completely finished. I'm outraged. So the other thing, and I know that given that this is a retail store, and I know how this works, and I'm sure that you have your own database of people's profiles which you're creating on purpose. If it doesn't have this complicated back end, it would be interesting again to think of using something like Google Plus to simplify that login process so that I don't need to go through and create an account. I hate creating accounts on my phone. I very seldom do. It's usually a good reason for me to decide not to use an app if I have to go through this whole process of doing something. Whereas with Google Plus, it's much easier. It's just a one-click, log in and then accept. So something to consider if you don't have restrictions preventing you from being able to take that approach.
And this isn't just a plug for Google Plus. There are other apps. For instance, in America, it's very common to have a Twitter or Facebook account on the phone. Any account provider that's installed an account provider plugin on the phone will offer your users a one-touch login. So if you want to log in with Twitter, you want to log in with Google Plus, you want to offer multiple options, that's fine. The most important thing is that they can log in with just a couple of touches, because that will keep them coming back to your app. That will prevent them from uninstalling your app out of frustration because they don't have an account. So you'll see a greater attach rate if you use it.
It's also a really great way of maintaining users across devices. So if they get a new phone or if they buy a new tablet and are able to log in and get all of the customizations that they did for free without having to remember the username and password that they created 2 years ago, it really helps just to encourage people to, as Ian said, log back in and keep using your app.
A lot of people that run very popular services don't think this is very important because they know that many of their users have installed this app because they love the service. But if you look at the way the trends are going, that's not going to last much longer. There's been a period of several years where mobile uptake was driven by users who had used the website and enjoyed it and wanted the same thing on their device. But if you look at our statistics for usage, we're seeing many more people interacting with the web and with services on their mobile phone, to the point where it's very likely that the majority of your new users will come from a mobile experience in the future. So being able to offer them the quickest possible path to useful behavior and useful functionality is going to be really important to your bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all about retention as well. I mean, I went through the process last weekend while I was shopping of trying to install and register my Safeway app while my wife was shopping, and I was pushing the trolley trying to get the Safeway app installed, and I had to create an account and then associate it with my Safeway card, and the whole thing took like half an hour, which was fine because it beat shopping, but wasn't the best experience in terms of encouraging me to actually use the app, let alone recommend it to anyone else. So, it's about retention, it's about getting to a point where you're driving a lot of new users from mobile devices. I think, as Ian suggests, we're kind of heading to that direction now, where you're going to be getting more and more new users from mobile, particularly younger users who just use their phones for everything. Never had a desktop, barely use their laptops. So definitely an interesting area.
Check out that Moto Guzzi. That's awesome.
Yeah. There's a lot of nice things here. Anyway,
all right.
We could browse the app for hours, but that's probably not the most effective use of anyone's time. So thank you very much for joining us and sharing
all right,
the app.
Thanks for your time. Cheers, guys. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, now the next app that I have probably got the wrong version installed of on my sheet of paper is Real-Time T-Bane. So the developer of Real-Time T, I'm guessing that's Barn? No, it could be Bane. You'll have to tell me how to pronounce it.
T-Bane.
Sounds kind of like a wrestler.
Can you turn on the auto tuner for this one?
The auto tuner.
You're almost right. T-Bane.
T-Bane, of course.
Hey, my name's Colin. I'm the creator of Real-Time T-Bane.
Thank you for
which
joining
is an app that's mostly useful for people in Oslo who use the T-Bane, which is the local metro subway service. The app provides a real-time view of the T-Bane network in Oslo. So it allows you to see the network as it is now once you're in Oslo, yeah?
I'm getting there.
Yeah. And so you can you can see in real time, although maybe the data didn't load.
I'm not sure. I looked at it yesterday and I saw all the little things moving around. I looked at it today and have not been able to see any, so I'm not entirely sure what's going on.
Oh, maybe it's the wrong version of the app.
Seems likely.
No, there is only one version of the app. That's the right version. But it looks like maybe the data hasn't loaded. You can try and back out of the app and load it again.
Yeah, we're seeing some.
You're seeing the movement?
Also
Cool.
refresh.
All right.
cool
Well,
data, yeah.
I'll back out of this and see if we can get
Lots
it
of
to load
little
up.
moving circles. This is so cool.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
They have better internet connectivity in New York.
Probably.
Definitely.
Yeah, this is like a dead zone in this building.
Yeah. Yeah. So remember, Reto is standing in what was once Andy Rubin's office, and the entire Android program was built around him. So there's all kinds of wireless devices. It's almost like keynote at the Moscone Center. Nothing works.
Yeah, Daniel, could you switch to the other box?
There is well, it's sort of a bug, maybe a feature, but it starts at your GPS location
Yes.
because well, I did think about maybe fixing that. So if you're outside of Oslo, to always center on Oslo, but I didn't want to make too many assumptions on the user's behalf. So if you wanted to force to load in Oslo, you should switch off GPS.
Right. No, it's okay. I enjoy scrolling. But it's definitely something you want to consider doing is, you do have the GPS button effectively on the map anyway. And nice work on using the latest version of the Maps API. Being able to sort of scroll and turn and change the perspective on this stuff is actually really fun. Let's see. I don't know why we can't get the locations. That's interesting because we're getting enough data to be able to get the routes. I don't know if you're pulling the routes down server side or if they are built into the app.
The routes are built into the app.
So it's likely that we're just not getting good updates, which is very strange.
I do think it might have been nicer to have a way to search, by station, for instance. That would allow me to go directly to what I'm interested in, no matter where I am. But it does also seem like you're right that purely real-time data on this system is unlikely to be useful outside of Oslo.
So a couple of minor things while we wait. The first is I consider using like a translucent action bar. Your entire screen is the map. Go one step further and make the action bar like translucent above the map. Yeah. There are some issues, of course, with showing the top left compass and the My Location button, but if you don't need those necessarily, it may be okay with that. But yeah, it looks.
So I'm curious to know if there was a specific driver behind the creation of the app. Is there a reason that you put it together, or is it kind of an experiment of, hey, we have this real-time data, wouldn't it be awesome to put it on a map?
It was a bit of both. I'd done a lot of Android development privately as private projects, and I'd never really bothered to put them out into the Play Store because they were a bit messy and weren't very well designed. So it was really an idea that I had to force myself to make an app that I would actually have to think about the design and make it usable.
Yeah.
So it's sort of just a play toy, you could say.
It's a pretty cool toy, as toys go.
Yeah. One comment I had one minor comment about the line visibility. So right now you have the little eye icon, and pressing that gives you a list of lines. You may want to make those checkboxes or something like that, where you can just show multiple lines. If you decide that it's really it's not useful to see lines 2 and 3, you either want to see one of them or all of them, then it's fine. But it is an option. You could use checkboxes.
Yeah, I did think about it. I tried to make the main use case the simplest. I would rather I think most people are going to look at one line.
Yeah.
So I would rather make that the main use case. But I did investigate that though.
I think the one thing that I could suggest, this is just a sort of bell and whistle thing, but it would be really cool if each of these circles had some sort of extra data, perhaps an arrow or something, so that you knew which direction it was going. Now, obviously, I can sit here and watch the circles move, and I know basically which direction they're going. But for instance, if the train was broken down, I wouldn't know which track it was on.
It also relies on your memory, like your short-term memory across a number of different things on the screen to recognize which way it's going. So having an arrow is a great idea. I think it really helps provide an immediate at-a-glance view of what's going on. And maybe you add the arrows only at a certain zoom level, like when you zoom in to the point where you actually can distinguish the different blobs. Like when you're zoomed out, you see kind of all of the blobs all on top of each other, and the arrows would even further clutter things. But when you're zoomed in, you may want to add arrows. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really nice app, particularly when you're actually seeing the movement of the trains. I'm really not sure why they're not coming up here. We do have internet connectivity, and it does seem to be loading, but it definitely doesn't seem to be coming up. Such as
Yeah,
life.
you were really missing out, right? So it's kind of awesome.
Yeah, I've got it on my other phone, and it looks great. Just
You want
just
this
not
for
the
New
phone we
York?
have connected to the internet to the overlay. But yeah, I don't
Last
really have a lot to
tiny
add.
nit is well, no, actually, I've got two. So first, there's a circle up at the top of the screen. It has an eye in it. That appears to be basically just a data provider. I would suggest that that's probably less important than the share icon, which is hidden in the overflow menu. You might want to switch those around.
Sure.
Cool.
I'm not very good at bugging people into sharing my app.
Oh, it's to share.
It's to share the app. Oh, well, then just take it out.
Yeah, it's just a link to the Play Store.
I thought you were going to share like a route or something. Actually, yeah, what is share? That's a good point. And then also, you've got a when I click on a particular car, it looks like I should be able to press this little pop-up that comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, sometimes when I press it, it actually does change color, as if there was some activity associated with it, but there doesn't seem to be. And actually, it's stopped changing color now. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, but it would be cool to, at that point, get into a detail screen for that specific, I guess, vehicle, and then from there maybe share its projected route or something like that. Something more than just kind of showing it on the screen. But yeah, I think the utility of this app is probably obvious to folks that are using this transit system.
Yeah, I think that's more a bug report than anything. And I'll make a feature request too. I think if I were using this app, I would also want to click on the station and see when the next train is arriving. You have that information if I click on the train, but if I'm at a particular station, I might be more interested in when I'll see the next train at that point.
Yeah, I was a bit worried about cluttering the map with too much information, so I wasn't really sure of a clever way to do that, because obviously once the trains are on the map, which they're not at the moment, it's quite a lot of data on screen at one time.
Yeah, but you're already showing the station. It's part of the Google Maps. There's a little T in a circle.
Yeah.
So, and in fact, if I were in the Google Maps application and clicked on this T, that's exactly what I would see is the trains that were available at that station. I don't think I'd see the real-time data. That's the value that you provide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The other thing which might be useful as well is to provide some kind of link into to Google Maps, so that once you're looking at something here. So again, if you're a local resident of Oslo and you know where the stations are and you know how to get there and everything else, and you are really just looking to get an update as to basically how long you need to wait for your next train to arrive, then then it's fine. But it may be worth considering. Visitors, people who are new to the city who might want to download the app and be able to find out how to get to that particular station from wherever they are. So rather than building all of that into your map, which I think is fair to say would be overkill, would be able to have a way of being able to, as I say, when you press on a station, be able to say, get directions to here, which then kicks you out into Google Maps to actually, show you how to get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice app. It's really well designed, really clean, really uncluttered. I think it's a really good effort.
Rachel, you're the location and maps guy. there isn't a way to install a layer provider in the Maps app, is there?
No.
That would be cool though, wouldn't it?
It would. I think we used to call it My Maps.
I think you can open a KML file in Google Earth potentially, but it's
nothing like this though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So I think that's all we've got time for. I'd like to thank Hans for organising GDG App Clinic Oslo. So round of applause for everyone for your organiser. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Got it.
Bye.